Okay. Hello, everyone. Today's episode is going to be a quick one. The title is Characters in the Story of Life. And so, when I was younger, the value of stories wasn't clear. At first, stories were just luxuries of the moment, spices that added to the manifest reality. I have come into an awareness of phenomenology that no longer causes my free will, or I shouldn't say my free will, it doesn't cause my intention to be kept in thought. So, okay, let me see this. Terence McKenna has this quote where he says, a culture evolves as fast as its language does. We have this German philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who says the limits of my language are the limits of my world. We have Hafiz Shirazi, this ancient guy from 700 years ago or something. He would say, the words you speak become the house you live in. And that's what I'm trying to communicate and get across. That before I was a character in a story, and because there were desires of a future projection of that story, the character could never change. Years of life were passing me by, but I still felt the same. You know, it was an artificial life. The inner reality will inevitably become artificial. You have to have the existential sensitivity to acknowledge it properly. This is what our civilization lacks on a mass scale. You see, I wonder about the psychology of existence pretty much. There have been times where I have considered the intelligent position to be just inside the brain, and there have been times where I have seen the attention move beyond the framework of the body. Now, whether that's a subjective reality or an objective reality, it all clarifies as you move around a bit. It's kind of one of those things where the person's like suddenly somewhere, and as they move around, the story unfolds. This is why the most important thing in life, people say, is whatever you do, just act. You know, just do something. You know, it's the simple reason is as you take steps into life takes steps internally into opening up to you. Meaning can arise from anything. You know, I could look at this object in front of me and now we call it a cup. You know, in different languages it has different words. So the subjective reality has a level of hollowness to it that in some sense the experience doesn't. So what that means is the foundation of our conscious knowing arises from the direct experience of objectivity, but as the direct experience of objectivity moves, it creates these sort of subjective timelines for itself. What that means is behind your eyes, you're not just being you, you're being everything. Now, some will say, Mr. Within, are you saying you're being everything because all of light enters internally and it's just all sensory data being recycled as reality? I will say no. It's not just that. It's not just the fact that there's an internal aspect to the intelligence of the external. You will feel no longer bound to conception. I don't know how to say it. I personally say to those who listen to me, you move beyond the language threshold. Now, what happens next is important. It's important because it is not subjective, and there's literally no instruction that can be given to you. It has to do with you being still and silent, and eventually your nature begins moving without the acceptance of an artificial reality. You see, a lot of ways you exist to yourself are subjective. When you suddenly notice all those subjective aspects of your existence, you also realize you're keeping them there. You know, there was a time where I would get angry. I would not angry, but I would easily feel I was permitted to fight back. Like it was as if nature was cruel, and I was like, why shouldn't man's psychology be cruel? You know, but it wasn't that heartless. For me, excuse me, the world turns beyond images, simply said. I wake up and I acknowledge the presence of my attention prior to my personality. The presence of my being is simple. The human being is being present in the most simplest way. You want to find consciousness, stop moving, there it is. You know, we have to realize that as we as creatures have an intention to move, the moment we move, we do it in accordance to a subjective opening. A sort of potential subjective reality is whispering in our ear, and as we take steps, it manifests. You see, it's like you go to your bathroom mirror to see your face, right? How would you see the face of your mind? And the yogis figured this out. The mystics figured it out. It is through the renunciation of the subjective realm. Simply said, when I say renounce it, you are renouncing your obsession for thought to be real. Then life becomes simple. It becomes so simple, you'll revert back to a state where you were in your childhood, before language had to torment the world, had to paint pictures of suffering everywhere. You can be in the greatest moment of suffering, but doesn't mean that has to be suffering. You can, there are those who are standing in heaven, but they experience it as if they're in hell. And there are those who stand in hell, but they experience it as if they're in heaven. Because the objective reality has managed to flip to the contrast. You know, this is not often spoken about, I think, but I think in the psychology of some of the most wealthiest people on this planet, they feel incredibly poor. Let me tell you why. You cannot take without that idea of taking echoing on in your mind. You see, that's the importance of action. This is why very quickly on, one of those blessings that came to me was I concluded that peace was smarter than the lack of it. I realized we had evolved from violence. Does that mean do we remain continuously violent? Philosophers have spoken about a utopia. You know, a utopia is the consideration of a perfect civilization, perfect society. You know, everybody's happy, no problem, no war, nothing. You see, that won't work either. The human attraction towards the how much activity the creature is exposed to through violence must be replaced through more efficient games. Because we are characters in a story and we start off as characters in our own story, you must live a couple years in your own story of life. Then you will wonder about the others. Then you will kind of feel how can I tell you, from every moment of existence can mean something different. The transparency of the subjective realm, once understood, is like the ultimate state. I will tell you two stories about these two monks. One of them is a senior monk, very wise man. The other is this new kid who's joined monk school. He's like, okay, let's be a monk. This senior monk and this junior monk are walking. They are walking on the side of the road, and the junior monk is trying to copy everything the senior monk is doing. This junior monk has just learned the rules, memorized everything. He's actually authentically trying to be like the senior monk. Now, something very unique happens. These two monks come across a road where on that road there's this incredibly beautiful woman who needs to get across this kind of stream situation to the other side of like the stream, and she can't do it alone. She doesn't want to get her garb wet, and so what happens is the junior monk, as they're walking past her, the junior monk looks at her and it's like, okay, we can't obviously help her. We're monks. We have taken vows and sworn celibacy and renunciation of, you know, touching women and whatnot. We're not allowed to touch women, right? So the junior monk is like, okay, we're gonna pass this by. And then the senior monk, to the shock of the junior monk, he sees the senior monk walk ahead of the junior and just kind of like, you know, watch and learn, junior. But the senior monk, he goes and helps this beautiful woman and helps her across the stream. And he carries her, you know, with in his arms, and he takes her there, and she thanks him, and in some sense, the task is done, and the monk's going to carry on walking. Now the junior monk and the senior monk are walking, and the junior monk is like, what the? The junior monk is like, this is my senior? Someone who doesn't even acknowledge the rules? So the junior monk is going through some sort of inner turmoil of like what is true and what is not in regards to conflict. Now, 20 minutes passes by. The junior monk is kind of getting nervous. He's like, I should say something. Like he's talking to himself. Eventually, he decides to say something. And very politely, he looks at the senior monk, and it's like they've been walking for 20 minutes after the incident. And the junior monk says, sir, with respectfully, I want to ask, you know, something like that. That's it. He says, we are not allowed as monks to touch women. You touched that woman and you gave in to your desire, you know. And pretty much he's telling the senior monk, like, explain yourself. And the senior monk looks at the junior monk like, oh, kids. And he looks at the junior monk and he says, I picked her up. So the junior monk says, how could you carry her, you know? And the senior monk says, I picked her up and I put her across the river, across the stream. I put her down there. But you have been carrying the idea of her in your mind for 20 minutes. And the kid's like, oh my God. He suddenly gets that kind of nirvana spark. And this junior monk truly understands why the senior monk is a senior, because it all has to do with the sophistication of how you approach your mind as it is being the moment. It is too natural to be taught. You're a natural being. Nature, your environment is your lesson. Your environment is your teacher. It has been like that. It is just a kind of courtesy of the technology of language that there have been gurus. It has always been learn from how the world changes. Though your moment of being is your greatest teacher to be honest. And so the junior monk comprehends this. He comprehends this, not, I don't think as that sophisticated, but the junior monk realizes that it's not about you touching women or not. It is about how your attention manifests your energetic expression in the moment towards an intention. It is the kind of hunger for something that brings a karmic turbulence. And as pilots of consciousness, we must navigate well. That is Mr. Within's kind of like playful command to the cosmos. You're here once. Your greatest performance is required. Every moment. Every moment. Just for one moment, forget the hierarchies of any sort. Forget class systems and just realize you are a moment watching the cosmos. You are a moment in the cosmos. And there is incredible freedom in that because it has not been defined. Language was something just like the caveman took sticks and stones and made fire. We took like symbols and made worlds of meaning out of it. However, it's a technology. It is not us. So what does that means? This is the chaotic thing. People are afraid of loneliness. It's hilarious. People are afraid of solitude. They are afraid of the lack of uh, uh, they are afraid of the denial of the evolution of their personality. You see, you can be caught for a lifetime in a game and trying to just work in accordance to the pattern of one personality. That what that means is every day you are trying to be the same person, so you see the same life. But if one day you open your eyes and the light that has entered your eyes is a world that you have not seen before, you will walk majestically. That was how kings walk. And when I say kings, guys, usually we get access to the idea of kings from kind of like kingdoms that they were tyrants. The tyrants are more visible. But did you know they were enlightened kings? They were kings that had no egos, and their kingdoms just lifted into the sky. I believe it's in the Ashtavakra Gita, where Janaka, this enlightened, I believe it's an enlightened prince or an enlightened king, who is talking to his kind of gardener or something. But his gardener is like an enlightened sage. He's talking to this sage. This enlightened old sage is talking to this kind of prince. And it's fascinating. Ancient Vedic scripture is something that the world is too belief oriented to allow itself to see. Do you know that if you know how they say 1,000 words is an image? Ancient scripture are ancient images. They are artwork. We're fighting over artwork. That is the war of mankind. All our wars are fighting over artwork because the fear of survival makes us grab too quick what must be given to the moment freely. you don't carry thoughts around anymore. You pretty much just like how the kid like was playing with toys and grew up, and suddenly the toys became civilization and society. It's like the activity. We have always been the same doer, but the activities have been different. If you notice, you have been the same person, but the way you have acted has been different. So we just by the nature of acknowledging the concept of memory, we are multidimensional beings considered. Our subconscious is already considering. You know, your subconscious is like a court for for the unconscious aspects of your mind, and so the judgment that we find, if you are raised in the Abrahamic kind of field of acknowledgement, like you. If you're a religious person, let me tell you, it's very easy. You must learn to fear God and recognize that God is the unknown movement of the world. You must respect every creation of God as a religious person. That ends. That's the end of religion. You return to your humble position as an organ of the cosmos. Your mind returns to nature. You see, in a lot of religion, there is the surrender of the ego. Go ask any scholar of religion. Just go say, what is it about, man? And they'll be like, it's about the surrender of your ego to the inconceivable will. That's what they say. But now check this out. We, on the other hand, like it's hilarious for me. It's the secular society and the religious society. The community. They are two sides of the same coin. They are doing the same things, but each wants to wear a different costume. You know, whether the universe was objective first, then subjective, or whether the universe was subjective then objective. It's just the stage is here now. You see, when I was younger, I was very shy. You know? And I don't know why. I think I was shy because I couldn't comprehend a lot of things like I would see. Sometimes there's a sort of shyness that it's the same shyness you find entering the forest where you don't know sort of kind of exotic. The pilot of consciousness, a term brought to this plane of existence by that which is within existence itself. We are the eyes of the world, and time is the driver of an inconceivable story. The character in the story will reach a point where it will suddenly feel like it's a video game character and it's being moved by something else. This is when the unknown is acknowledged. When you acknowledge the unknown, you, my friend, have automatically reached the pentacle of wisdom. That's the truth. The truth is, if you choose to contain it, you have created the measurements, and if you choose not to contain it, then you have forgotten it. And so this is why all we can do is keep standing and continue walking. That is it. That is the only instruction needed. Live. Live for the living world while you're in it. That moment where, let's say, the Sufi dervishes in that tradition, they acknowledged a second self. It's as if they weren't one person only. It's as if they acknowledged a sort of death that could occur before the physical death. But what is dying, you know? And so it is playfully the detachment of attention of how it has been attached to phenomena to remain the same, as the Rig Vedas say, you know, the mind is a slave to the wheel. You see, you got to find contentment, instant contentment. Think of it this way: your eyes are like a camera. Okay, you want to have good movement, you need to have a stabilizer. You need to have stable movement. In order to have stable movement, you silence the subjective realities instantly by just having your external attention on any single point. It can happen, you know. If you want to be poetic, go look at yourself in the mirror, you know. But any single point of attention, and suddenly, as the external attention becomes still, suddenly more you're aware of the movement of your subjective existence. Eventually, it will fade, of course. Being sitting down still and silent, just any human being can see this. If you just stop doing what you're doing, it's as if the patterns of life will slowly fade from the background. This is why it doesn't matter how skilled you are, where is your attention? And if you have found it, then Mr. Within will say you have found the center of existence. You have found where all sensory data are gravitated to the eyes of a living moment in an inanimate universal sector, in stuff in space. Suddenly, some part of the stuff is looking at itself. And we have stories to even talk about it. This is why sometimes I'll tell you like this. It's like that chaotic story where the character is trying to get rid of the illusion of the world. The character is trying to get rid of the illusion of the world. The character goes and finally finds himself in that moment where he can get rid of the illusion of the world. But then at that point in the journey, he has seen enough to realize that there is a reason the illusion is here. It's as if you will stop fighting with evil, and evil will stop being evil. Because idea worship has stopped. Because fear is not causing a savage selfishness. Desire can cause savage selfishness too. Ooh. Think of it this way. Imagine like this kind of let's just analyze this notion, okay? That let's say there was this Buddhist kid, okay? This Buddhist kid, it suddenly realizes like he understands there's a concept of reincarnation, and suddenly sees himself painting things he has never thought he could have painted before. Just things that as if they are urges from a different life. This kid, imagine, goes to a sage in that culture, and the sage kind of enters the akasha and tells the kid that he was a great artist, for example, in his past life. Okay. Now that kid will come and hold the paintbrush again, and this time try to draw, and then there will come a question in the mind of that person. You cannot just believe in ideology beyond physical reality and have no question, you know? For me, it's when I see certain people who are just content with only one story of the world, I am like, savage this, holy shit, you got better, you know? Because the world is, it's painted into meaning. by every breath that is aware. Even in your dreams, there will come pictures. I have personally died in some of my dreams, but I have also opened my eyes in dreams where I was not myself. I was a totally different being, totally different person. So what I'm trying to say is consciousness is hilarious. It acts as if it is individual, but it exists collectively. This is why back in the day when tribes were formed in history, it was as if a person would find fruits and would be like, holy shit guys, there's apples here, and come back to the tribe. And what would that mean? That would mean suddenly everybody had access to apples. You know? And I think Steve Jobs had a similar spirit. That we want to bring gifts for the world, for the future generation. You know? There's the story that it's the story about Sadhguru, which I heard him saying in his YouTube videos, which is nice to share. And he says that he goes to this vegetable market. He sees in one of the counters of the vegetable stands, there is a very shiny being, a very liberal being. He goes up to that person and he just laughs and he looks at the person and says, why are you selling vegetables? The guy says it sounds Sadhguru, they laugh. In some sense, the guy tells Sadhguru a story that he went to the hospital in India and it was a good hospital and he was like a hospital and he was waiting for himself to die. So he had to question the nature of existence every day because it was going to its life. And eventually, he suddenly realizes, the guy in the hospital realizes the nature of reality, and miraculously, his health arises and he returns. He returns to the living world. It's as if before his body left, he saw where it was going. Back in the day, they didn't have any distractions. The guy was pretty much born in a world where it was just houses. Not even paved streets, And the guy would go walk out and, what else did they have? They would ask questions. Why is all this stuff here? Why am I here? How am I here? These questions have entered the minds of everybody here. This is why philosophers don't admit it, but everybody is a philosopher. Everybody's eyes are open to the world. The character, first the attention is the mind of the child, I believe. It creates the mind becomes the world first, and then from the world extracts itself from its subjective duplication of the actual objective reality. It finds itself into a sort of individual. So let me tell you, it's like the thoughts we have of ourselves, this is how they are kept. There is an objective reality. Imagine like we copy paste that, but it's with a cellular subjective texture, and that becomes your subjectivity. Now that subjectivity, it is much more flexible. That means the gift of our minds for the human species is that we look at the inanimate and the animate. And there is the wonder of a soul that no longer needs to be temporary or eternal. We will get tired of the games of men and gods. You will just look at nature, put your hand on a tree. And breathe as if the winds of evolution pull us all. There's many things I don't know. There's there were moments in my life where I felt suddenly I had kind of accessed an ancient pattern of how the world was in place. You see, I had this view when I was younger that there are hidden memories in the world. And in certain states of being, these memories are rekindled. But I soon came to realize language is an incredible show. I want to go into a quote tunnel of this person named Shams Tabrizi. He was the poet Rumi's kind of mentor. And there are certain lines, I'm just going to read his quotes one by one. This is the quote tunnel kind of portion of the tunnel. The universe is a complete, unique entity. Everything, Shams Tabrizi says, the universe is a complete, unique entity. Everything and everyone is bound together with some invisible strings. Do not break anyone's heart. Do not look down on those weaker than you. One's sorrow at the other side of the world can make the entire world suffer. One's happiness can make the entire world smile. Again, here this man is making suggestions to the collective being, the collective presence of humanity. Shams Tabrizi says, a life without love is a waste. Should I look for spiritual love or material or physical love? Don't ask yourself this question, Shams Tabrizi says. He says discrimination leads to discrimination. Love doesn't need any name, category, or definition. Love is a world itself. Either you are in at the center, either you are out yarning. And this of course, follows in with Shams Tabrizi was a dervish. From the Sufi tradition, and this kind of goes that the highest form of love is not the love of man. It's not like love is a sort of union between people. We consider, between beings, but this is one where it's a union with in a microcosmic illusion with a macrocosmic truth. It is the divine union. It is as if there's a way you go and see, go to a gathering, see your friends, hang out. But then there are moments where this in the Sufi mindset, it was as if the gathering of souls, the gathering of worlds. Shams Tabrizi says, instead of resisting to changes, surrender. Let life be with you, not against you. If you think my life will be upside down, don't worry. How do you know down is not better than upside? This man knows what he's saying. Shams Tabrizi says this world is like a mountain. Your echo depends on you. If you scream good things, the world will give it back. If you scream bad things, the world will give it back. Even if someone says badly about you, speak well about him. Change your heart to change the world. Okay, thanks. Shams Tabrizi says it is pointless trying to know where the way leads. Think only about your first step, the rest will come. Shams Tabrizi says when everyone is trying to be something, be nothing. Range within and entrance. He says patience is not sitting and waiting, it is foreseeing. It is looking at the thorn and seeing the rose, looking at the night and seeing the day. Lovers are patient and know that the moon needs time to become full. He says whatever happens in your life, no matter how troubling things might seem, do not enter the neighborhood of despair. Even when all doors remain closed, God will open up a new path only for you. Be thankful, it is easy. I don't think it's the word beloved. That's the word they would use. The beloved was the ultimate love of the source of being, you know. So he says, be thankful, it is, he says, even when all doors remain closed, the beloved will open up a new path only for you. He says, be thankful. It is easy to be thankful when all is well. A Sufi is thankful not only for what he has been given, but also for all that he has been denied. You can study God through everything and everyone in the universe, because God is not confined in a mosque, synagogue, or church. But if you're still in need of knowing where exactly his abode is, there is only one place to look for him: in the heart of a true lover. He says the past is an interpretation, the future is an illusion. The world does not move through time as if it were a straight line proceeding from the past to the future. Instead, time moves through and within us in endless spirals. Eternity does not mean infinite time, but simply timelessness. If you want to experience eternal illumination, put the past and the future out of your mind and remain within the present moment. Mr. Within's giving a high five to this guy right now. He's right, that last line, put the past and the future out of your mind and remain within the present moment, that is just all of Zen also. Shams Tabrizi says, no matter what people call you, you're just who you are. Keep to this truth. You must ask yourself, how is it you want to live your life? We live and we die. This is the truth that we can only face alone. No one can help us. So consider carefully what prevents you from living the way you want to live your life. I'll read that again. It says, so consider carefully what prevents you from living the way you want to live your life. He says, you learn by reading, but understand by love. He says, don't search for heaven and hell in the future. Both are now present. Whenever we manage to love without expectations, calculations, negotiations, we are indeed in heaven. Whenever we fight, hate, we are in hell. He says love is a travel. All travelers, whether they want or not, are changed. No one can travel into love and remain the same. Shams Tabrizi says intellect takes you to the door, but it doesn't take you into the house. Shams Tabrizi says to get closer to truth and right, we need a beautiful and soft heart. Every human learns one day or another to become softer. Some accidentally, some because of disease, some suffer from human loss, some other from material loss. We all face these situations, but we can either see the good in it and open our hearts, or unfortunately see another occasion to lock it forever. He says there may be one fault in a man that conceals 1,000 qualities, or one excellence that conceals 1,000 faults. The little indicates much. He says most of the problems of the world stems from linguistic mistakes and simple misunderstandings. Don't ever take words at face value. When you step into the zone of love, language as we know it becomes obsolete. That which cannot be put into words can only be grasped through silence. Shams Tabrizi says, when a sincere woman begins to dance, the seven heavens, the earth, and all creatures begin to dance. Become the greatest student of your conscious existence. Nature cannot keep itself hidden. Once it lives for itself. I say there's only one way to live for life. You need to live for life. You need to live for this living world. There's no other sort of eternal value. The only value is in how the future generations choose to look at the world. Humorous as it seems, in a world, in a universe of a billion, trillion, countless stars, clarity was found to come from within. Thanks for listening. Much blessings and thanks.